Okay, good evening everybody. It's Wednesday night. I know we have to get back into the swing of things. So today we learn halacha and Tanya. So it's interesting where we are in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch in Siman Chavtes. The topic is the midas, the morals and ethics that a person should have. Now, before we actually start the actual learning, I just want to mention that morals and ethics in Torah are very important. We have a Gemara called, Mishnah called Pirkei Avos. The introduction, the first Mishnah, Pirkei Avos, says, Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai, the Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah from Sinai and gave it to the Yeshua and Yeshua to the elders. So the commentaries ask, if that purpose is just to tell us the evolution of the oral Torah, so then it should have been the first Mishnah of the entire Mishnayos, which is Brachos, which is literally halfway. The Pirkei Avos is halfway through the order, the six orders of Mishnayos. So then what really should have happened is that the first Mishnah of the first tractate should have said the evolution of the oral Torah. Moshe got the Torah, gave it to Yeshua, Yeshua to the elders, until it came to the men of the Great Assembly. So the sages explain why is this Mishnah that Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah at Mount Sinai, in the introduction to Pirkei Avos, which is ethics and morals, because a person needs to know that there's morals and ethics in the world. As everybody knows, what was completely immoral in the 50s, now is a mitzvah to do. And morals keep changing based on generations of, well, again, everybody knows what was immoral years ago is completely moral today. Because morals which are designated by people, like the Constitution of the United States, was made by the people for the people. If it was made by the people for the people, then it's obvious that if in the 1980s and the year 2024, it's better for the people to have a different amendment, so then we amend the Constitution, which means we change it. Now, why is it legally allowed to change the Constitution? Because the Constitution was made by the people for the people, and therefore, you need to change it. Morals and ethics of Torah, conduct, how a person needs to conduct themselves, were given by Hashem. And that's why beginning of Pirkei Avos it says, Moshe Kibul Torah Sinai, because the Torah is teaching us that Moshe Rabbeinu got morals and ethics came from God. And when God gave morals and ethics of Torah, He foresaw the 1900s, the 2000s, and 3000s, and Hashem saw everything. And the morals and ethics of Torah are exact. They're not relevant to times and places. They're ultimate truth. And therefore, what you learn in Shulchan Aruch, which is really these dinim are based on the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, when the Rambam in Hilchos Deis, the beginning of Rambam, the book of Rambam, the Rambam discusses, which morals are right, what's proper, what's improper, what's, how to behave. So, this is what we're going to start learning in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is very practical halacha. It's not stam teaching morals, it's halacha. Torah says this is the way a person has to conduct themselves. So it says, I'm going to read it outside and explain it. So in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he quotes, this is all quoted from the Rambam. People by nature are different. There's a person that gets angry very easily. There's a person that never gets angry. Or he gets angry once in many years. I haven't met such a person yet. But anyway, there's a person who's extremely haughty. There's a person that's extremely modest. There's a person that has desires and a lot of temptations. And there are people, and as much as you'll give them, will never be happy. And then you'll have a person that is a pure heart. He doesn't want anything. He has no taivas, no temptations, no desires, not in food, and not in a lot of issues. And then you have a person who's very broad by himself. No money in the world will be enough for him. Like it says in the pasuk, Oyev Kesef Li, Shlomo Melech says in Koheles, Oyev Kesef Li is Bekesef. A person who loves money will never get full of money. He'll never have enough. There's a person on the opposite side, a person that's cheap and it doesn't need money, it doesn't want money. And there are people that eat a lot, and there are people that starve themselves. Okay? There's people that spread out, throw out money very easily, spenders, and there are people that don't spend. So the Rambam is starting basically in these halachos and Shulchan Aruch that there are people that with different tendencies to the extremes. Person, like you said, always gets angry, a very nervous person, people that never get angry. So he said, what's the best way for a person to act? What is the preferred way for a person to behave in life? So he says the proper way that a person should behave is middle of the road guy. A person in Yiddishkeit, it's not good to be, with a few exceptions. For instance, haughtiness, anger, those are extremes. A person has to be an extremist. But generally speaking, a person should not be an extremist. A person should be a middle-of-the-road person. He should want what the body needs and not luxuries. He shouldn't, he should work to be able to live properly. He shouldn't be too cheap. He shouldn't spend too much money. He should give tzedakah based on what he's able to do. He shouldn't be too joyful. He shouldn't be too depressed. He should be a normal of the road person. Now there are exceptions to this rule in addition to anger and haughtiness, but generally speaking, it's like this. Normally, a person is supposed to be a middle of the road path. Children should be raised to be a middle of the road path. The path in the middle of the road. Because if you ever notice when they plant a tree, they plant a little tree in the ground, the city does it, and then they put poles on the side with wires to make sure that when the tree is young, it grows straight. Because otherwise it can start growing crooked. So when a person is educating kids, and the first way is educating ourselves, then by being a personal shining example, then we can train our kids to be normal. So what happens is we need a person, when they grow, especially when they're young, they need to go straight. But what happens sometimes, the branch is bent all the way to the left. The branch is bent all the way to the left. Now you want to get back to the middle. But if you bend it back to the middle, it's still going to be 45-degree angle. So what do you need to do? You need to bend the branch all the way to the opposite side. And then hopefully it will go back to the middle. So in other words, the whole concept of being a middle-of-the-road person is the proper way of being, not to be an extremist in anything. Except if a person was bent all the way to the opposite side, for instance, if somebody, God forbid, was addicted, whether it's cigarettes, alcohol, or whatever, so then you have to be an extremist. A person was addicted to cigarettes and now they're trying to stop. They can't even be around a person who's smoking. They have to be totally extremist. A normal person that wasn't addicted, a regular person, they don't have to be an extremist. So this is what a person needs to understand. You should be, Torah says you should be in the middle of a road, and the Rambam says, and halacha says, that a person who does the middle of the road path is called a chacham. He's called smart. He's an intelligent person. But there's a few things that a person needs to be an extremist with. Number one, haughtiness. Haughtiness is the source of all evil. Because haughtiness means I'm better than somebody else. I'm only into myself. Therefore, it's hard for me to get subservient myself, to give myself up for what Hashem wants me to do. It's very difficult for me to do it. And in fact, the Gemara says, ma'id, a person should be extremely, extremely careful. Ma'id means extremely, extremely careful in shval ruach, to be humble. That's one of the things a person needs to be extremist about. The Gemara at the beginning of Saita has like 4 pages discussing the evil of haughtiness. And it says basically, if you have haughtiness, it's like idolatry, adultery, murder. I mean, the Gemara mentions 4 pages of cursing out, so to speak, the concept of haughtiness. And Hashem says about a haughty person, if you're so full of yourself, then there's no room for me, Hashem says. So you're not letting me in. In fact, the Gemara says, even a Talmud Chacham, Even a scholar who's representing godliness, Torah, needs to have shmini shebeshminis, an eighth of ego. An eighth of an eighth. And another rabbi right away says, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Eighth of an eighth is a minimal, but there's a very interesting word. The Vilna Gaon says, why does it say the concept of an eighth of an eighth? What's the eighth of the eighth? So he brings down that the eighth parsha of Chumash, told us, the eighth parsha of Chumash is Vayishlach. The eighth sentence, the eighth pasuk of Parshas Vayishlach is Yaakov Avinu say, Kotainti mikol hachsadim umikol hams. I am humbled from all the kindness Hashem did to me. So he says that's why the Gemara uses the expression. The Gemara doesn't say a little bit. The Gemara says an eighth of an eighth to the hint to the fact that a Jew should have Kotainti, like Yaakov Avinu realized whatever Hashem does for us, we really don't deserve. It's coming from Hashem's kindness. Now, humility, as we learned many times, doesn't mean I'm a piece of garbage. Not Trump, I don't mean Trump garbage. I mean that we're not a piece of garbage and I'm worthless and I'm no good. That's an idiot. That's not humble. That's an idiot. What does humility mean? You know who you are. We spoke about this last Shabbos. A person's supposed to know their faults and they need to know their uniquenesses, their traits that they have, the good talents that they have. Why? Because if a person has a talent, let's say in art, and they say, nah, I'm a lousy artist, I'm not going to do it. They're wasting a talent. God gave you a talent of art, music, whatever it may be. Hashem gave you a talent, and a person instead is not going to utilize the talent. What happens is they're wasting a creation that Hashem made. Hashem gave you a talent, utilize it. So we have to know what our talents are. It's equally important to know what our faults are. Because if you don't know what our faults are, how are we going to get better? If you don't know what the illness is, how in the world are you going to get better and go to the doctor, to Hashem and Torah, and become better? You're not going to know what to do. So therefore you need to know your faults and you need to know your greatnesses, your uniquenesses. What's the difference? The difference is as follows. When a person knows their greatness, they don't become egotistic from it. Why not? Because a person realizes this talent was given to me by Hashem. And if somebody would be given the same ability as me, the same neshama, the same talent, the same ability, they would be much better. That's what the definition of humility is. Not to walk around saying, I'm a nobody, I'm a nothing. That's a fool. A person needs to understand you need to know who you are, but think and realize seriously that this is all a God-given gift. And if somebody else would be given the same God-given gift as I was given, they would be much better. So in other words, when a person knows who they are, that they're good, but that doesn't cause for ego because they realize I really should be better. So I'm not accomplishing what I could do. If I could be better and I'm only good, then what am I doing? I'm not accomplishing what I really should be accomplishing. So that's why it says, but gaiva though, haughtiness, it says it pushes away the Shechina. You think, to paraphrase in modern day language, you shouldn't think you're God's gift to the world. Okay? Yes, you're God's gift to the world, but you really should be much better than we are. That's the definition of humility. And as we find in the Chumash, the Torah says, Moshe was the most humble person that ever lived. Moshe Anav Meid in Parshas Baleischa. Moshe was the most humble person that ever lived. That didn't mean Moshe Rabbeinu didn't know who he was. Okay, Moshe Rabbeinu in Chumash writes, there was never a prophet as great as Moshe Rabbeinu. He wrote it. Torah Semes. So what do you think? He didn't know that he was the one that received the Torah? You don't think he knew he was the Rebbe of the Jewish people, that Hashem spoke through him to the Jewish people? He didn't know. Of course he knew that. So how was he most humble person? Because Moshe Rabbeinu realized if somebody else would have been given the same talent and the same abilities I was given, they would even be greater. So he says like this, a person should think, how do you get, Kitzur Shchunar says, this is all from the Rambam, how are you supposed to become humbled? He said, first of all, you should speak calmly, not, oh, you know who I am. Calmly, bent down, your eyes should be down, but your heart to Hashem. And you should think in your mind that this person that I'm talking to is really better than me. Because they're accomplishing their mission more than I am. And if it's a Talmud Chacham, you say, well, he's a bigger scholar than me. I have to honor him. If he's richer than me, then the Gemara says Rebbe would honor the wealthy people. Because the fact that Hashem entrusted the wealthy people to be God's finance, holding God's financial portfolio of Hashem trusting his money with this person, you need to honor him. Rabbi would give, he says, so Rabbi said, if Hashem gave this person wealth, he must be deserving of it. He must be a good banker for Hashem's money. And if he says, if the person is not as smart as me, not as wealthy as me, you should think, you know what, he's still better, he's more religious than me. In his life, he's doing more than we should be. So he says, if a person thinks like that, then you'll never come to Gaiva. And that has to be an extremist. Another thing, the next thing in the kids over here is, anger is also a terrible, terrible midah. It's very bad to have anger. Anger has to be uprooted. He says a person should train himself never to get angry. Even somebody that's worthy of getting angry should never get angry. Which means it's like this. Let's explain this a little bit. The Rebbe explains this in Tanya, in Igersa Kodesh Siman Chafei. There's an expression in Chazal, the question is the origin of it, but there's an expression in Chazal that whoever gets angry is worshipping idols. Okay? Now the Rebbe brings it down in Tanya. They say, Maimeh Chazal, whoever gets angry is like worshipping idols. So now the Rebbe explains why. Because I got angry at you, it means I'm worshipping an idol. So the Alter Rebbe explains at great length. We learned it in the Tanya classes. But in a nutshell, if you believe in Hashem, and you believe everything that happens in the world is coming from Hashem, why do I get angry? Because you did something to me that I don't deserve. You did something wrong. You wronged me. Yeah, but if you believe that Hashem runs the world, and it happened to you, that means you should believe Hashem wanted it to happen to you. Hashem wanted it to happen to me because he made it happen. This that the person did a sin, that's between him and God. In other words, the Alter Rebbe differentiates and separates in Tanya between, I'll give you an example. A kills B. Okay? A kills B. Now, if A kills B, that means B was supposed to die. If not, Hashem wouldn't have made him dead. He wouldn't have died. A killed B, B was supposed to die. So now the question is, so why is A punished for killing somebody? He should be rewarded. He did God's dirty work. The answer is there's two separate things, and this is very important, the whole concept of anger. I've been spending time on it because it's in halacha, it's a very important concept. What happens to me came from Hashem, through that person. Now I have to think something else also. Granted, I think it's terrible, but if Hashem did it to me, and Hashem is good, the ultimate good, and the nature of good is to do good, so then ideally, it's good. I think it's bad, that's my problem. But if you believe in God, if you believe in Hashem, that means Hashem made it happen to me. And it's good, because Hashem is good. That person did it, the A killed B. there's two things. B died because Hashem wanted B to be dead. Why is A punished? Because A did an act against Hashem. It has nothing to do with B. You separate the issues. A guy messes you up. Okay? A guy insults you. Okay? So there's two ways. The Torah way of looking at it is like this. Hashem wanted to be insulted. He wanted me to be insulted. So it didn't matter who it was that did it. Why am I angry at that guy? Hashem wanted it to be done. So if I'm angry at the guy, that means down deep I'm saying it shouldn't have happened. That means Hashem didn't make it happen. That's why it's idol worshiping. So when you deny the existence of Hashem, okay, and you're saying that I get angry because this shouldn't have happened to me, what you're basically saying is there's no God at that moment who did this to me. Because if you believe in Hashem, then Hashem made that happen to me, so therefore it should have happened to me. So why am I getting angry? Hashem wanted that to happen to me. You can be angry at God, by the way, you couldn't care less. But then also you're a fool. Because Hashem did it to you, in essence it's good. So what are you upset about? So that's why anger, the Gemara says, or the Chazal, wherever it is something of idol worshipping. And therefore a person has to do everything in their ability not to get angry. Okay? And he says even more. Even though, let's say sometimes you have to show anger. I just want to close this door. Just quiet. Even if I'm supposed to show anger, let's say at my family, the kids did something terrible, I'm supposed to, he says you're supposed to fake it. You're not really supposed to be angry. So somebody asked an interesting question once. So then it's bad education because you're teaching your kids that you could be angry. But if the kids see that you're not really angry, you're just upset with what they did, you're angry at what happened, not at the person, so then it's an excellent chinuch that you're educating the child that anger is a terrible thing. Okay? In fact, Eliyahu Navi said to Rav Yehuda, the brother of Rav Saleh Hasidah, he says, don't get angry and you will never come to sin. Don't get drunk that you shouldn't sin. And there's another issue involved, which is not halacha, it's just a very practical thing. You know, when a person's drunk, they say things they shouldn't say. The Gemara says, Nechnas yayin yatzesod. When wine goes in, meaning you get drunk, so all the secrets come out. Okay, Nechnas yayin yatzesod. Same thing, by the way, when a person's angry, they will say things, because now they don't have control over themselves. They will get angry, they will say things that they shouldn't be saying, and they're going to regret it later. Because when a person's not angry, we have a control. So you can say what you don't mean. But when you're angry, what you really say is what you really mean. And therefore the person will hear that when you're angry, and they'll realize that what you're saying is what you really mean. And then you're going to say later, I didn't mean it. It doesn't work. Because it's like when you're drunk, you say, what would you say the truth? Because you don't have control over ourselves anymore. Okay? Now the Gemara says, Chazal tell us, whoever gets angry is worshipping idols. All the powers of Gehenna control the person. And it says evil is, and he says people that get angry, their life is not a life. Because they're always angry. You know, angry people are miserable in life. This is all halacha, by the way. I'm not saying anything philosophical. This is all Shulchan Aruch saying the dinim. And the Alter Rebbe in his Shulchan Aruch also mentions all these dinim also. Therefore, you have to distance yourself that you don't feel anything. And that's the way of tzaddikim. That what? The Gemara says, aluvim, they get embarrassed, but they don't answer back. They hear cherpasim, they hear their people making angry at them. Ve'enim ashivim. Their cherpa means their embarrassment. People embarrass them, they don't answer. And And the Gemara says, by the way, a person who lives like that when people insult them, embarrass them, or hurt them, they don't care about it, they're forgiven for all their sins, the Gemara says. So this is these two things, even though normally we just learned that a person should be a middle-of-the-road person, nevertheless, in these two things, haughtiness and anger, to think I'm better than anybody else. When really, you're not better than anybody else. And just to mention one more point about this aspect, that, we mentioned this many times as far as the many different things go. But let's say two kids are taking a test. One gets a 95 and one gets a 70. Okay? So normally the 95 kid will say, hey, I'm better than you. I got a 95, you only got a 70. But that's a very incorrect statement. Because if the 95 should have gotten 100 and the 70 could only get a 70 based on their mental abilities, then the 70 is 100% and the 95 is a failure. So who's to measure who's better than 95 or the 70? So we as humans say, 95 is better than 70 for sure. But where Hashem looks at it, it's not what you do, it's what you should be doing. And that's the big difference between these two approaches. Okay, we're going to go to Tanya.